Whoa, Nelly, that last video is very long. That was like very long. It was like 20 minutes. I'm very sorry, but it's just really long. Okay, so I'm going to make this one faster. So Jack and Annie are on a mission to save the Grand Lady of the Lagoon. So yesterday they kind of got off track. They went to, because they thought they were supposed to find the ruler of the seas, who they thought was the ruler of Venice. Turns out that the ruler of the seas is actually the Roman god Neptune, who was thought to be the ruler of the Mediterranean and the Adriatic seas. Now, obviously Neptune is not real, so Jack is like, oh, we're another dead end. But what they find out is that the Grand Lady of the Lagoon was considered to be Venice herself. The actual city was sometimes nicknamed the Grand Lady of the Lagoon. So what they realize is, what they really have to do is they have to actually save the city of Venice from some kind of disaster. And it's somehow tied into this concept of the god Neptune, the Roman god Neptune. Now, the problem is they have to save them at a particular time of day, and none of the clocks in Venice seem to say the exact same time. So that's kind of where their next sticking point is. Now, they've used one magical rhyme to get out of prison, and so they're working on their... they have 9 magical rhymes left. So they kind of have more of an idea of where they're going. They know they have to save the city of Venice, but the question is, how are they going to be able to save an entire city? So quickly, let's go over vocab. Canal are those... channels of water that run through the city. The gondola is the boat that they use to go through the canal, and the gondolier is the person who rows the boat with a big oar. Grouchy means grumpy. Eerily is kind of like spooky or creepy. A prong is one of the tines of a fork or a trident, and you guys know what a trident is. It is Ariel's dad has one, so does Aquaman. It's that thing with like 3 little thingies that stick up. It's like, yeah. And then Venice is the actual city in Italy. So let's go ahead and see if Jack and Annie can figure out how they're supposed to save an entire city and what the disaster is. We have to save all of Venice, said Jack. That's like a big responsibility. And what are we even saving Venice from? Well, if Neptune's going to help us, it's got to have something to do with the water, said Annie. Yeah, like the water that's flooding in the alley, said Jack. Well, the woman at the cafe told us not to worry about it, said Jack. Well, I am worried, said Jack. Let's look up floods in the Venice book. He found the word flood in the book. He turned to the right page and read, most of the time, high water in Venice is not serious. But if several conditions are present at the same time, a flood disaster could occur. A flood disaster, said Annie. That must be what's coming. So what are the conditions that could cause a flood disaster? All right, it lists them, said Jack. He read, high tide, strong winds from the south, heavy flow of water from the mountains, and severe storms at sea. Well, we know there's a high tide tonight. The passenger with the bird mask and the gondola told us that, said Annie. Yeah, and the winds are coming up from the south, which the weather vane told us, said Jack. And we know water's flowing down from the mountains because the woman at the cafe said it, said Annie. Yeah, and there are definitely storms at sea, said Jack. I saw a whole lightning when we crossed the water. All the conditions are there, said Annie. They looked around. Water was now flowing steadily from the alleyways into the square, and it had now risen to above their ankles. I get it, said Jack. The water will just keep getting higher and higher until it destroys the city, and no one's paying attention. Neptune's the only one who can stop the flood. Yeah, said Jack, but Neptune's not real. I mean, he's a character in mythology, but mythology's not real life, and... Okay, said Annie, let's take it one step at a time. It says that at midnight, 2 guys are going to tell us the time, and then we climb to the top of the tower, right? Right, said Jack. So our next step is to find 2 guys. Let's go back to the waterfront, said Jack. The man with the dog said everyone in Venice is going to be there for the fireworks. They put away the book and then retraced their steps over the footbridge and back through the alleys. There was lots of seaweed floating in the narrow lanes. Water is definitely coming in from the sea, Jack thought. When they got back to St. Mark's Square, people were streaming towards the waterfront. Annie and Jack walked with the crowd. Everyone was talking and laughing as they looked at the sky waiting for the fireworks. No one seemed to pay any attention to the damp winds or the seawater spilling over the canal. Excuse me, Annie shouted. Can anyone tell us the time? No one answered, and just as the first explosion shook the night, the crowd cheered as blue and red showers exploded in the sky. In the distance, the clock began to chime, and Jack counted the bongs. 12, he said. It's midnight now according to that clock. The fireworks exploded, and Jack heard another clock clanging. This time he counted 11 bongs and shook his head. This is crazy. Jack looked around. "Can anyone tell us the actual real time?" he said. "Is it midnight? Can you tell us?" No one answered, not even one man, much less two. Everyone was just oohing and awing over the fireworks. Then another clock began to sound. This one was way louder than the first. "Bong!" "This is hopeless," Jack said. "Bong!" "We're never going to know the right time." "Bong!" "Hey, Jack, look over there," said Annie. "Bong!" "We're never going to find two men in a tower," said Jack. Bong! Where do you think they're going to have to go to get the clock tower? Do you guys remember? We actually already heard the answer at the beginning of the book. "Jack, look," said Annie. Bong! "All of Venice is about to drown in a flood," said Jack. Bong! "Everyone's just sitting here cheering." Bong! "Jack, won't you look?" Annie said, and she pointed to the clock tower in St. Mark's Square. Bong! Jack saw a huge bell on top of the tower. Two bronze statues were holding a club and striking at the bell. Bong! The statues were two men. Bong! "At midnight, two men will tell you the time," said Annie. Bong! The two men struck the bell for the 12th time, then stopped. "Come on," said Jack. "That's the tower we have to climb." More fireworks thundered over the canal as they pushed their way through the crowd. They ran into St. Mark's Square and splashed to the tall tower with the two men. They ran to the arched entrance and stepped inside. The air felt damp and musty. "Stairs," said Jack. He ran to a dark winding stairway and started up. Annie followed. They climbed and climbed and climbed until they'd reached the top of the tower. Jack was breathing hard as he pushed open a heavy door that led out onto the bell terrace. The two statues were frozen on either side of the bell. As they stepped onto the terrace, the wind blew their hats off their heads. The air was filled with crackling and hissing as fireworks burst. Everyone on the waterfront was clapping and cheering. "All right, what's the thing Merlin tells us to do to find Neptune?" Annie said. Jack pulled out Merlin's letter and held it tightly. "The king of the jungle will carry you there, not over land, but high in the air." "Well, the king of the jungle is a lion," said Annie, "so we need to find one of the flying lions." "Right," said Jack. "Where?" "How about that one?" said Annie. She ran to the terrace railing. Jack looked down. Standing on a ledge below them was the statue of a lion. Growing out of its back were two powerful-looking wings. "But it's just a statue," said Jack. "How can a statue take us anywhere?" Annie grinned. "I think it's time to use some magic." Chapter 7. The King and the Ruler. What rhyme are they going to have to use? Do you guys remember from the list of rhymes that we read earlier? Chapter 7. The King and the Ruler. "Oh, right, of course," said Jack. He'd actually forgotten all about the book of rhymes. He pulled the book out of his backpack and they looked at the table of contents. "Stand on water," said Annie. "Make a stone come alive, make metal soft, turn into ducks, fly through the air." "That's it." "No," said Jack. "Go back. Make a stone come alive." "Why?" said Annie. "Because the lion's going to carry us," said Jack, "and he already has wings, but he's made of stone, so we just need to make him come alive." "Huh, right," said Annie. "Then what? Where do we go?" "I don't know. Merlin's letter said an angel of gold would show us the way," said Annie. "Angel of gold," said Jack. "Where are we supposed to find that? And then how are we supposed to find Neptune, and how's Neptune going to save Venice?" "Have patience," said Annie. "If we need more magic, we'll just go back in the book." "Okay, let's hurry up," said Jack. He opened Teddy and Kathleen's book to the second rhyme and took a deep breath. He looked down at the line on the ledge and read out loud, "Stone so silent, cold and hard, Kamatalai, Kamatascard." So there is the lion that they're going to have to fly on. A cracking sound seemed to come from deep within the lion's body. As they peered down at the statue, the lion's stone mane ruffled into a shaggy mass of fur. His stone back softened into sleek golden coat. His stone wings stretched into long, luminous feathers. "Wow," breathed Annie. Jack couldn't speak. Before their eyes, the statue had turned into a living lion with magnificent golden wings. The lion shook his mane and yawned. He had huge, sharp teeth and a long pink tongue. His ears twitched and his tufted tail switched back and forth. The lion crouched and leapt off the ledge like a cat. He spread his wings and caught a strong current of wind. His wings flapped and he began circling above the square. "Here!" Annie shouted. "Here!" and waved wildly. The lion turned and flew to the tower. He glided silently onto the terrace, landing a few feet from Jack and Annie, and stared at them with golden eyes. "You have to help us save Venice from a flood disaster," said Jack. "Can you take us to Neptune?" The lion padded towards them. He kept staring at them, and then he tilted his tremendous head and let out a growl, like he was trying to answer. "We have to climb on your back now," said Jack. "I hope we don't hurt you," said Annie. The lion let out a growl, but didn't sound angry. He sounded like he was telling them to hurry up. He crouched so they could climb on. "I'll go first," said Jack to Annie. "I'll hold on to his mane, and you hold to me." Jack slipped off his backpack and dropped it onto the terrace. "Take the book of rhymes," said Annie. "Got it," said Jack. He tucked the book under his arm and carefully climbed onto the lion's back. Annie climbed on behind Jack and wrapped her arms around his waist. Jack twisted his fingers into the lion's mane. It felt surprisingly soft. "Okay, we're ready," said Jack. The lion stood up and trembled. Then he leapt off the terrace. "Ah!" Jack yelled. The book of rhymes slipped from under his arm and fell down into the flooded square below. "Oh no, our book!" cried Jack. "Hang on!" The lion flapped his wings and rose through the sky. Jack pressed his knees into the lion's back and clung to his mane. The lion flew towards the fireworks. A shower of red sparks was opening like an umbrella. Booms and whistles filled the night, and fiery bits rained through the darkness, whistling into the canal. "Help! We're going to head straight into the fireworks!" The lion dipped and turned away. The red showers gave bursts of blue and green. "Which way?" cried Annie. As the lion flew towards the square, Jack saw the gold weather vane on top of the watchtower. It was in the shape of an angel. "An angel of gold!" said Jack. The weather vane was no longer pointing north with the wind. Instead, it was slowly turning, pointing in all directions. "Fly close to the angel!" shouted Annie. The lion turned and flew towards the watchtower. As they drew near the golden angel, Jack called out, "Which way? Which way?" The weather vane turned in a full circle and then came to a stop. The angel was pointing towards the southeast, over the choppy water. "To the sea!" Annie called. The lion turned and soared into the wind, his strong wings shining like gold. "Wow!" cried Annie. The flying lion glided past the fireworks and over the wide canal. Leaving Venice behind, he flew over the sea. Jack gripped the lion's mane with all his might. The lion sailed in and out of the thick clouds. He flew above crashing waves and past bolts of lightning. He flew through screaming wind and pelting rain. In the middle of the sea, far from land, the lion began to circle. "What's he doing?" cried Jack. "Looking for Neptune!" cried Annie. "Neptune is not real!" shouted Jack. "I know!" said Annie. "We just gotta use our imagination, like Lorenzo. Try to imagine Neptune." Jack tried to imagine Neptune, but he was too scared to think clearly. "Neptune!" shouted Annie. "Rise from the water! Save Venice, Neptune! Please help us!" Annie's voice was lost in the wind. Jack wrapped his arms around the lion's neck and buried his face in the mane. He tried desperately to imagine Neptune. The lion let out a roar. With his hands under the lion's throat, he felt like he himself were roaring. The lion roared again, and the roaring made Jack feel strong and calm. Slowly, the details of the painting came back to his mind. In his imagination, Jack could see Neptune, ruler of the seas, with his white beard and his long hair, his strong arms and his shoulders. He saw the lovely lady who was Venice, the grand lady of the lagoon, and he saw Neptune giving the grand lady a gift. "Hey, I think I see something," said Annie. Jack opened his eyes. "Where?" he cried. In the water," said Annie. Clinging to the mane, Jack peered down into the darkness below. Lightning flashed over the sea, and Jack could see a huge three-pronged spear rising up out of the waves. The sea below the spear began to heave and billow. Lightning flashed, and Jack saw a great mass of swirling seaweed rise. Not seaweed, it was hair, Jack realized. A man's giant head and neck appeared above the surface of the water. The man's massive shoulders, chest, and arms rose above the storm-tossed sea. The giant loomed high above them, tall as a mountain. See, that is a trident. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. And those little thingies, uno, dos, tres, yeah, those are prongs on the trident. See, I told you what a trident. You knew what a trident was. Did you guys know what a trident was? "Neptune!" cried Annie. The lion let out a roar and then another. Lit by flashes of light, Neptune's face looked as if it had been weathered by thousands of years of wind and sand and waves. He had deep-set eyes, craggy cheeks, a white beard, and tangled hair to his shoulders. "Neptune, save Venice from the flood!" cried Jack. "Please," cried Annie, "save the grand lady of the lagoon." Neptune looked at them for a moment, and then with his powerful arms he lifted his spear and thrust it into the waves. That is not a spear, it is a trident. When the spear pierced the surface of the water, the sea made a gurgling sound, and then a long as if it were water flowing down a drain. The thunder and lightning stopped. The storm-tossed waves grew calm. The wind died down to a gentle breeze. The clouds parted and the stars shone. Neptune raised his spear and nodded to Jack and Annie. "Thank you!" cried Annie. "Yeah, thanks!" said Jack. The lion roared. Then Neptune began to sink back into the sea. His long arms, huge shoulders, thick neck, craggy face, floating hair, all disappeared. The prongs of his spear sank below the surface of the water. The ruler of the seas was gone. Only a shimmering whirlpool swirled in the moonlight. Chapter 8. Home by Day. And that's where we're going to stop for today. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow before this video gets even longer.